first weigh in on something that I know you know a little something about, and that's the Middle East. You've seen the announcement by the British that they want to recognize a Palestinian state if there are certain, well, you can tell me what they are. There's certain provisos here that that they are, I think, designed, those provisos, to put pressure on the Israelis to change policy in Gaza.
Well, you have to back up for a minute and ask, what Palestinian state? There is no formal Palestinian state. There are no boundaries or borders to a Palestinian state. But do you recognize Hamas, or do you recognize the Palestinian Authority, which is one of the most corrupt operations around, which hasn't had an election since 2005? There are a number of interesting developments, but I will tell you the most significant development is that the Arab League, all 22 nations, have voted that Hamas should be disarmed, that Hamas should be put in the position of releasing all hostages, and in return, the Arab League is endorsing a two-state solution, meaning recognition of Israel's right to exist. It doesn't alleviate the tragedy of Gaza. It doesn't alleviate any of that. But you will note the New York Times on the front page today had to print a retraction. They'd had a picture of a kid who they said was a victim of starvation, who in fact has other physical problems. And they had to admit in the report on the front page of the New York Times that they got it wrong. That doesn't obviate the question of whether or not there are real issues in terms of starvation and malnutrition and all the rest. So these are all issues that are now being addressed. I think it's too little too late. People ask me, who do you blame? I don't blame anybody. I think the world could have and should have reacted much more quickly to reassure the Israelis about their security, to get the hostages out, and to condemn Hamas. Finally, that seems to be happening, but it doesn't excuse the fact that we still have the same conundrum. And the conundrum is, can you have a solution that guarantees Palestinian rights, but not at the expense of Israel's right to exist? And that, to me, is the bottom line.
I think you focus on something that did strike me too, which is you can recognize here the Palestinians' right to a state or to safety in their own homeland. I just don't know what that looks like. And as you say, that real estate isn't there right now, at least identified in any sort of discernible way that's been recognized by the rest of the world. It's a very, very tough, unforgiving situation in Gaza. It's not supported by a lot of the Israeli population. It's interesting to me, and just in reading about how Netanyahu has pursued this policy, and he is demanding the return of the remaining hostages and the elimination of Hamas, and he goes through Gaza in this unrelenting fashion. That is not supported by a lot of Israelis on the street, is it, John?
Oh, of course not. And people ask me about, if you criticize Israel, what does that mean? It means you're doing what they do in Israel. If you read the Israeli press, as I do, there is absolute condemnation of the Netanyahu government on a whole broad range of issues. But I would point out to you, the first time we have had a real condemnation of Hamas by the Arab world itself is now. What took them so long? What took so long for the Arab League to say, release the hostages? So my hope is that out of all of this will come a more positive moment. For the people of Gaza, it is a tragic situation. I don't know any way to ameliorate it, to be very honest with you, because between the struggle between Hamas for its decisions and the Israelis seeking their own security, one can feel great sympathy for the Palestinian people. But these are wounds that have been inflicted by too many mistakes on all sides.
Well, the deep wounds of history can't be denied in that region, for sure. I want to come back to this country. I want to come back to the midterms. Everybody talks about the midterms. The midterms are going to be great. Just wait for the midterms. We're going to take them. This will be bad for the midterms. Texas Republicans unveiling a new congressional map for the midterms that would provide their party in Texas with 5 new red-leaning districts, a plan that, if enacted, could provide a boost to the party as it tries to cling to control of the House. The redraw would significantly benefit Republicans by making districts held by Democrats like Henry Cuellar and Vicente Gonzalez, who both represent heavily Latino areas of the Rio Grande Valley. It would make those areas redder and make some Democratic-controlled districts even bluer in an attempt to create GOP-leaning districts elsewhere. The proposed map would also put a number of Republican and Democrat incumbents in the same district. It only sets up one primary matchup between Democratic Representatives Greg Casar and Lloyd Doggett, avoids any messy GOP primary fights between incumbents. So 6 districts wouldn't have an incumbent under this new map, according to this data released by the Texas legislature. So that leaves both parties with a rushed recruitment process as they try to get something hustled together for the midterms. But that would be a huge opportunity for the Republicans to retain control of the House, John.
Yeah, let's back up and point out redistricting takes place every 10 years. This is not on the 10-year cycle. What the Republicans will be doing in Texas is unprecedented. I do want to respond by saying that Gavin Newsom is saying, if you can do it there, we can do it in California. And if, in fact, the congressional elections are reduced to this kind of redrawing of maps, we're in big trouble in terms of democracy. There would also be challenges to whether or not it is constitutional for the Texas Republicans to ram something like this through. And that leads us back to the Supreme Court. I would point out to a lead story today in the MAGA world is that the Republicans are being prepared to replace members of the Supreme Court as they pass away. The idea being to solidify the conservative, or if it's not even conservative, the Trump base on the court. It is a profoundly disturbing moment in history. As for the redistricting, you're right. Once upon a time, there could be real swings in Congress, in the House, because we've seen it in 46, we saw it in 78, we've seen it repeatedly. But the simple truth is that those kinds of competitive days seem, and I want to underline the word seem, to be over. So this redistricting story should be on the front page of every newspaper, and we'll see how it all works out.
Are you optimistic about the midterms? You oftentimes speak about
yes, I'm always optimistic, as you know. It's our point of difference. But I would I would suggest
I'd call you delusionally optimistic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm delighted to be delusional and optimistic at the same time. No, I believe there will be a reaction. You're already seeing what the Republicans have done with their so-called Great Big Beautiful Bill, which is what it's now called. It's neither beautiful or, well, anyway. But the real cuts don't take place until after the midterms. That's what you call real courage by the Republicans. And of course, when you take a look at what's happening now with Medicaid and the number of people who will be removed from the Medicaid rolls, it's absolutely horrific and will have a huge impact on health services. So,
but again, that won't kick in. That won't kick in until after the midterms. Yeah.
You're going to talk about the EPA
Right.
in the next hour, but those of you who've listened to Lee Zeldin and what he has said, he's the director of the EPA. They're going to gut the most basic elements of protecting our environment. And I talked to an expert just the other day because I was very curious about this. Will it leave a lasting effect? He said, of course, you can always, with the Democratic administration, reverse things. But yes, there is an impact. There is an effect right now.
Well, you cannot reverse the kind of damage that they're talking about.
No, you can't.
Unleashing. Well, I mean, because we're talking about greenhouse gases, carbon monoxide discharges, goes into your lungs, all of these industrial pollutants into your lungs, produce cancers. You can't reverse that. That in other words, once you've gotten cancer, once you breathe in these carcinogens, they get deep down into your lungs. You're living with it, and some Democratic administration isn't going to clean your lungs out. And here's what John was talking about.
What they will do is reverse what the Trump administration is doing. What they're doing is being done by executive order. An executive order is not legislative action. It's an executive order, can be reversed. And I believe that it'll take another few years. And let me point out to you that J.D. Vance seems to be now the leading candidate to replace Donald Trump. and that if something happens to Donald Trump, J.D. Vance would become president. And immediately that changes the whole equation. Let me point out another difference. We're watching the disaster in Ukraine unfold, and it is a disaster. It should be on the front page of every newspaper, but it isn't because there's too much else to deal with, including the Epstein case. But the simple truth is that J.D. Vance opposes aid to Ukraine, and if he becomes president, the whole American policy may shift. So these are all things. I heard an interesting speculation. Who would J.D. Vance take as his vice president if he were to succeed to the presidency under the 25th Amendment to nominate? And the answer is Donald Trump Jr. That's the one who promoted him, pushed him, and would make a great idea of continuity. So we're talking here about major issues that we will confront without any doubt.
You know, we pay more for medicine in America than any other country in the world.
Yep.
And one of the things that is often railed against, you'll remember when Donald Trump and MAGA Nation, you guys all thought yourselves the outsiders. You were screaming about we're going to, it was a real populist movement. Donald Trump oddly positioned himself as an outsider, even though we'd already had 1 4-year period with him. And Big Pharma is actually the beneficiary of so much when it comes to American protectionism around drug prices. Even Big Pharma is pushing back against the tariffs that have been imposed on a lot of medications from Europe. A 15% tariff is being levied on medicines from Europe, medications that are desperately needed by Americans, that are regularly used by Americans, desperately needed or not. And so you end up with prices that are already, as I've mentioned, higher than any place else on earth.
It's
getting
appalling.
even higher.
Yeah,
these are the new Trump tariffs.
Right. And let me explain to you, and I know that I've said it before, and I don't want to be redundant, but I do want you to understand, a president can't set tariffs, theoretically.
It is illegal.
Is
That's
the
right.
only one who can do it. And what has happened is that the Republicans in Congress have dealt a terrible blow to the balance of powers by abdicating their responsibility on this tariff question. One thing is clear. People ask me, what will the major issues be in the midterms? The abdication of Congress of its responsibility on so many levels. But this is an ongoing disaster for the balance of powers. You know, our colleague Ron Owens used to argue that he would rather see a divided government. And I always told him he was wrong. It was better to have a single party in power. That's how you got the New Deal. That's how you got Ronald Reagan's reforms. But I have to tell you, I owe Ron an apology, because clearly divided government would have been much better. Look at the approval of a judge, a man who is completely, we're going to get to that, I know. Why don't you open it up with that? But by a vote of 50-49, with the Democrats absolutely opposing any action on this level. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It was 50-48. But this is a lifetime appointment. Beauvais is a man whose record is so reprehensible that his own colleagues opposed his nomination. And yet the Republicans are caving to this kind of thing. You have some sound on that, I know.
This is Emile Beauvais, just to fill in the gaps. This is Emile Beauvais, who was Trump's personal attorney, yet again another personal attorney of Trump's, defense attorney, rising to now the position of a seat on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. That's
a lifetime seat.
Yeah, it's a remarkable thing. And here's a little sound on, I believe, Democratic reaction. This is Chuck Schumer.
Right now. Okay? Yes.
Emile Beauvais was confirmed last night, even after a number of whistleblowers
press conference around
the 11th hour. But what
the
do you think this
Beauvais
means going forward for
confirmation.
future whistleblowers who are thinking about?
I think I said it was one of the low points, not only in this Congress, but in the history of Congress, to put a man like this in such an important position as a circuit court judge. It's a disgrace. He doesn't belong there. And our Republican, he only had one qualification. He'd do whatever Trump wants. That's a horrible qualification for a judge. Yes.
I mean, he's right. I mean, that's exactly what Beauvais is about. I mean, whistleblower reports were coming out of the woodwork. There were 3 of them. saying that he recommended that the administration ignore court orders that would disrupt Trump's aggressive immigration agenda. And this was the reaction that was associated with, that is, Bove's reaction was associated with the pushback, the very strong legal pushback early on in the immigration, aggressive immigration policy of the new administration. So in other words, when they were deporting people, putting them on planes, sending them away, Bove's view was, and he literally said this according to the whistleblower report, when the court tells you, tell them, just, F the court, is what he said. F the order. This is according to these whistleblower reports. So, I mean, he's right when Schumer says loyalty to Trump is the bottom line. That really is all that you need display to get these appointments.
Absolutely. And this is another disaster. Who is president matters. And I kept saying that. I've said it in every talk I've given on presidential elections for years and years and years. And it's true. The fact that Bove is now a confirmed to a federal judgeship, given his record, is mind-boggling.
They have a video, apparently, John, we have video of the Democrats walking out of this confirmation and this confirmation vote. Go ahead, Tony. Here it is.
Sir, with all appeals to your decency, with all appeals to your integrity,
that's Cory Booker.
With all appeals to past jurisdiction and past precedent, why are you doing this? This is outrageous.
This is a kangaroo court. That's all we have here,
This
Mr.
is
Chairman.
wrong. To violate your own rules without going by the mandates of the parliamentarian. This is unbelievable. There's a way to do this. If you want to force this through, if you want to ram this through, there's a way to do it in accordance to the rules as spelled out by the parliamentarian. It is simple. It is clear. There's a pathway to achieve what you're trying to achieve. But, sir, this lacks decency. It lacks decorum. It shows that you do not want to simply hear from your colleagues.
So
and that's the tragedy.
What he's talking about is the fact that they rushed this vote through. They didn't give the whistleblowers time to testify, to offer any sort of official pushback. It was really rammed through in a big hurry. That's basically what he's saying there when he says, why are you doing it this way?
That's correct. And when you take a look at the vote in the United States Senate, I mean, we have another comment, I know, a recording of Cory Booker speaking, but do you understand that there were judges who are Democrats and Republicans who said, this guy doesn't belong on the bench? And unfortunately, the Republicans are having their way. That will be the comeuppance, I believe, Mark, in the midterm elections, if the Democrats make the right case.
I see these things coming together. I won't get into a big back and forth with you on this now. I know that these appointments are a mess. They are, in all the ways we've talked about, corrupted by blind loyalty without real competence. You have people at the highest levels of government who have no real competence. You mentioned Lee Zeldin. He is a hard right former legislator who is just there to dismantle the EPA. Everyone who is in a position of power in Washington is either there to dismantle the agency or because of loyalty to Trump. See Gabbard, see Hegseth, and their competence is not in the building because they don't have any when it comes to dealing with that which they're supposed to administer. So I put all of this in a category of something that Americans don't really follow so closely, John. I hate to say it. I was just talking to a very smart guy the other night over dinner, and he said this, and I thought it was insightful. Excuse me. Had to cough for a second. He said, you know what I like about Trump? He said, I like that he said he was going to do things and then he did them. He actually gets things done. And I thought, and then I started to argue with him over the stuff that he was actually doing. I mean, he's thrown the law out and he's just running roughshod over the American systems. But his view was, well, if that's what you have to do to get stuff done, then I guess he saw that he could do it.
And that's what a dictator does.
Right. And
That's
so
what
it
an
made me
authoritarian
think,
dictator does.
it made me realize that people are attracted to these strong leaders. Sometimes these strong men, they achieve a level of obedience. They achieve a level of momentum around their cult of personality. And I think that's what Trump has had. And it leaves them in a position of support from people, some of whom are very well educated, but just don't follow things day to day.
It's astounding. I just want to say one thing about the White House. I have a White House guide here signed by 3 American presidents and 7 first ladies. I love the White House guide that originally was composed by Jackie Kennedy. 2 things have happened. Number 1, the Kennedy Rose Garden, the Jacqueline Kennedy Rose Garden has been cemented over. He's going to build some sort of patio like he has at Mar-a-Lago. And the second thing is they're talking about, and this is unbelievable, talking about renaming the Kennedy Center, the Trump Center. And indeed, one of the major theaters in the complex to be named after Melania Trump. I mean, one is absolutely dumbfounded. The Kennedy family issued a statement. Maria Shriver actually wrote the statement expressing their absolute horror at this. I'm going to go even further. It is a revision of history. And when the history of this administration is written, not only will it be based on corruption, but it will be based on this incredible response. So I'm glad we've raised all of these issues, and there's so many more which could be talked about, but that's also part of the game plan. Hit so much of this stuff, and then you can't really focus. It's too much to absorb. But
Yeah,
what
no,
happened,
you're right. I mean, it's its own tsunami of crazy and incompetence and corruption and a policy that is absolutely serving only one part of America, and that's the wealthy class. I will mention that the Kennedy Center, and I smiled, even though it's crazy. The Kennedy Center renaming is something that Trump, I'm sure, would love. I mean, he loves to see his name on everything, but and that's just not me being anti-Trump. I mean, it's true. I mean, he's just it's the thing with him. But the Kennedy Center renaming comes from the desire to kiss his butt. That's what's happening, to suck up to the president, isn't it, John? I mean,
well, these are Republicans.
That wasn't a Trump suggestion. Yeah,
these are Republicans that are proposing it. But
exactly.
All I can tell you is when the history of this administration is written, and I believe this with all my heart, we will have never had a more corrupt presidency in American history. I think it is unprecedented. And the president of the United States doing these kinds of things makes it just incredible. What bothers me is that his base doesn't see it. By the way, you know what they're doing now? They're having a hearing, the House Republicans, on Joe Biden's mental competency during his term as president. And I understand you have questions about it. Just read Jake Tapper's book, which is a full expose of the fact that Joe Biden wasn't necessarily up to it. But I can tell you, this is such a deflection, such a distraction. We have had presidents who may not have been at their full best. Woodrow Wilson, after his stroke in 1919, most assuredly Franklin Roosevelt in 1944 and 45. We have seen presidents who simply lost it. But to then make this a major political issue and distraction in the midst of all the crises taking place, I just find it incomprehensible and very disturbing. And I won't say it shatters my faith in the American political system, but I will say it goes a long way to making me wonder about what the founders would think if they were alive today.
You're going to be last to the party, but everybody's joining my party, which is the questioning the American political systems, not because of the systems. The systems actually brilliantly placed and brilliantly reformed along the way and in need of more reform, but because of the people. Systems are people. I've said it before, and the people involved in our system now, the people who occupy the heads of many of these systems within the overall system. I'm talking about agencies of government. They are corrupt, and you said it
Talk
straight
about
out.
Pam
They are.
Bondi. Talk about Pam Bondi. Talk about Don Bongino. Talk about Kash Patel. Talk about, and I hate to say it, Lee Zeldin, who once was a more moderate Republican. This is astounding, and I'm glad we're able to touch on it. And when we replay the tape of this broadcast 10 years from now, people will, I believe, see the evidence and the truth of what you and I are saying. I do believe that in the end, we will wake up and the system will correct itself. But the damage being done in the meantime is appalling.
Well, that's just very well put. And sadly, it's a summary of where we are. These judgeships, I think, represent maybe the last bulwark against the sort of complete control that Trump has taken, dictatorial control. I'd suggest that the dictatorial control is almost complete. And it was given to him by, as you suggested, a Congress that had control, for example, over the tariffs. They could have easily said, look, we love you, but the tariffs have to come through us. That's an important part of what we do. They didn't. They've given him total control. So I feel as though you've found in this moment in America a party that has surrendered completely to this guy.
Exactly.
And so the only outstanding, shall we say, again, bulwark or barrier to his complete takeover is the courts. And now you've seen the courts succumb. You've seen the courts succumb in ways that we saw with Emile Beauvais and his nomination.
That goes right along with the Congress. If Joe Biden had made this nomination, the Republicans would have been absolutely up in arms.
Well, his confirmation had to go through Congress, so you're exactly right about that. But the fact that they kept out the whistleblowers, they kept out and rushed through this entire process, that's what angered the Democrats. That just speaks to the way in which they are completely at the beck and call of this guy, Donald Trump. And the last thing I'll say, if I can, I always feel like that's something that you say, the last thing I'll say, but the last thing I'll say is the way that they wanted to bury the Epstein conversation, that he would adjourn Congress. Mike Johnson, MAGA Mike, would adjourn Congress to avoid a vote on the release of the Epstein files. That tells you how completely in the control of Donald Trump Congress is. They adjourned the goddamn Congress because they're worried about the damage reputationally to the President of the United States. So they don't even want to vote on the release of the file.
Just imagine what we'll be talking about in September when Congress reconvenes.
Right. It'll be the first thing up, won't it? Yeah.
Yes. I hope so.
John, we covered a lot, as we always do with you. So grateful for your time. You can hear John daily. He does his show every day. When do you do it? You do it first thing in the morning?
First thing in the morning. And let me point out, I am leaving you for 3 weeks. I
know. I'm not happy about it.
I leave on Friday, and I will not be doing my podcast, nor will I be interacting in any way. And I want to apologize publicly to everyone. You can blame my wife. She insists we go on this vacation. And being the dutiful husband that I am going to go along.
Well,
you can imagine I've issued a decree. I want you to know this is an absolute ironclad decree that no news is to transpire during the 3 weeks that I'm away.
That is quite the that is quite the decree. Well, we'll look forward to your return. So you're Around the Political World with John Rothmann will not be on the air during the time that you're away.
That is correct. Nor will I have some pre-recorded stuff for the Voice of San Francisco, which is easy to do. It's interviews and so forth. And many of you who live in San Francisco know we have a major recall campaign going on in the Sunset District, the Supervisor Joe Longardio. That vote is September 16th. So we've done a number of pre-recorded segments on that. But no, I regret to say that there will be a deafening silence, and my poor wife is now going to have to listen to my comments exclusively.
So you are going to be back what date, sir?
We get back, I think, on August 22nd.
All right. So we'll see you at the end of August. He is the great John Rothmann. Wish him well. Bon voyage and lots of love, my friend.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.